think the world has only heard The Rover, and we've played that one live, and it's going over really great. So as far as the reaction to the songs on the record, I can only comment on The Rover, which, yeah, so far so good, and live especially good. And then we've also actually been playing live a song called Now You've Seen Me at Work, or NYSMAW on the album. And that one, no one's heard it, but it sort of is a song that we were all really pleasantly surprised when we started rehearsing it, that it kind of just comes alive live. So that's a song that, a lot of this, because we're not a 4-piece in the studio, we're just a 3-piece, so we lay it down with me on bass, but hearing it as a total band performing with the bass and the second guitar live is really exciting for us. So I think it's going over well. I think the energy in the studio this time around was slightly different than the last record, which, as you mentioned, was the first time we worked without Carlos. I think last time we found our sea legs, so to speak, or we found our footing as a trio. And this time I think it was sort of just a continuation of that. So there was no stage of, how are these songs going to come out? Can we write cool music together? Like, we know we can write cool music together, so what's next? And I think, so we just kind of, I remember on the last record, we finished writing the last record with a song called Tidal Wave, which was a really neat drum and bass interplay, and that was where Sam and I had kind of left off. That was the pinnacle of our evolution together at that point, and so that's where we started this time. And I think that there's a lot of just sort of groovy interplay between bass and drums.
It was just that, it wasn't even thought about at that point, because if El Pintor was the process of moving along with someone who was once very instrumental in the whole process. Now that person's not there, someone else has taken over, and you really can't stop to go, is this working? It's almost an insult, so that you kind of have to take it on faith, and of course give a little leeway for Paul finding his feet. But Daniel and I were pretty much sold on him writing and performing the bass parts like shortly into the whole process. This time it was just like, oh, that's Paul, that's what he does. This is how that band operates now. So it wasn't really a surprise, it was just like kind of getting on with it. But looking back, it's just like, wow, he stepped it up even further. I think it's adhering to like it being a performance-based record, like very quintessential to the three of us as a band. I think sometimes in the past, we've, with the self-titled record, for example, I've recorded most of the drum takes alone in advance of the rest of the band, and that worked for that record. It was a great experience. I'm glad that we had the opportunity to work to that extreme, and this is quite the opposite. This is just like, at minimum, 3 people always playing live.
I think that there's something very direct to this record that maybe sets it apart from some of the other ones. There's a quality of minimalism that we try to preserve. So I think there's sort of less keyboards, less overdubs. It's really, we try to keep it a little bit more faithful to what we were accomplishing in the room. And then we stuck to that. I think sometimes you can get to the studio and you're working in Pro Tools and you can sort of perfect guitar parts, or say like, I want to change guitar effects in the chorus, so let's stop and then punch the chorus with a different guitar and a different amp setup. Whereas on this record, it was sort of like I would just play the songs top to bottom with all the pedal changes. And because Friedman got really excited about that possibility. But what that led to is like, I'm not even that good with the pedal changes, so some of them are happening in sloppy moments. So the chorus isn't there yet, but you hear my guitar change tones a few beats before the chorus, and that's just because I'm turning 2 pedals off and 3 pedals on in a long sequence, so that transition becomes very sort of organic and human. And it might even register subconsciously, but what it is like live.
Consequently, the record's very lively, raw, maybe a bit of an urgency to it. And that's because, it's not like that's something we went for or we try to create in the studio. I think that's the way the songs were writing themselves in our shitty little rehearsal space in New York. They just were kind of bouncing off the walls, and it had this energy to them. That's something that we started seeing maybe 3/4 of the way through. And then when we went to work with Dave Friedman, I think he kind of heard that probably as well. And so consequently, we went in the studio, we recorded it to tape, and we kept it very loose, and we kept it, but also that's because we were very prepared. And I think we just sort of we just recorded the record, you know, so if something felt good, we just moved forward. We didn't just go, is it perfect? Is this an exact take? It'd be more like, that felt good. This record has a lot of personality. I think it's something that's definitely, I think, a record that we each one of us walked away. Sometimes it takes a minute to sort of decompress after you make a record, to sort of, and have a little bit of distance to sort of sense like, well, how do I feel about what we just did? I think I can say that this record we left all tired and burnt, obviously, from being up in the woods for so long doing this. But I think we all knew that we all felt we had a common place where we just felt like we felt good about what we did. I think no. I think that was more just you know, just some felt more of some things are too good to be true. And we had this like great. We're sharing the EAs. Well, the EAs were kind enough to let us share their rehearsal space on the Bowery, and it was just great. And I think Sam and I especially were kept being like, oh man, it's great down here. It's so nice. It's so cozy. You leave the world behind. They made such a nice little clubhouse. Oh man, it's the best rehearsal space we've had in all of our years. Sounded great, felt good, we're getting the work done. Just like really for once, leaving New York behind when you went to actually go play music, which, you know, it's always been like, you don't leave the city behind, you don't leave other bands behind, they're just going through the walls because there's usually practice space facilities. And felt like finally we got somewhere where we could just, you know, do that. And then sure enough, like, you know, the police came down and complained during like a really, like a bad blizzard. I guess it was like a neighbor probably home from work that day, and then it escalated to like another time where we're just like landlords were getting calls and we tried to reason with them. And it seemed like we're getting somewhere then, but you know, lo and behold, there was a cop like the next time we made any music, and you knew that was, I mean, basically we're giving the ultimatum, we had to leave. So it was a real bummer. Right now, it didn't feed into anything. I think we're fortunate that we were able to sort of, you know, find another practice space to go into right away, and not lose too much time or energy, because it's harder in New York to do those kind of things, you know.
Lyrically, I think it is, and you know, these are things that become more clear as I talk to people about it, and because I didn't really make it. I don't know. I don't have an agenda for an overarching agenda on a record lyrically, but now that I talk about it a lot, I kind of feel like what it does is it sort of it's the tension between having evolved past some previous self, while that is intermingling with an awareness that like you know you're not yet fully realized, you're not yet everything that you would aspire to be as a person, and there's that tension of like, you know, aspirational versus, you know, nostalgic, and with the nostalgia there's also mixed in with that a sense of accomplishment of what you have done. So I don't know, I think that's it. I think there's that tension of sort of better but not perfect. I don't know how that in a really concrete way affected the new record, that Live Bright Lights tour. I think that what it did though was kind of give us good context and perspective, because you get to see while you're writing new music what it feels like to play your music to an audience. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of, we'd been out of that seat for 4 years, and so, or maybe not 4 years, but for a while. So I just felt kind of good to be back on a stage playing our songs, and then going straight back into the writing sessions on this new music. It was just sort of a good, you know, it gives you a clear vantage point on what the live experience is, and so then you can then envision the songs that you're writing, like how are they going to translate in that arena. So I just feel like it was sort of cool. I think as an artist it's nice to revisit your early work and sort of, rather than say like, oh shit, now I know I want to do something different, it's kind of like, oh cool, I'm a very different artist now than I was when we wrote that music. But now we got our kind of creative juju back, as far our live energy flowing again, and I think that came into the studio with us. So I just feel like we were sort of a very unified band when we recorded this record.
For me, I felt like it was just kind of good we were so far along writing a new record, and I think traditionally I just don't want to interrupt. Like when we're writing a new record, I'm like, no, I don't want to, I just want to keep working on that and keep moving forward. So, but this time I think when the idea came up of maybe going to do the Bright Light shows, it felt like maybe this will be good for us. We were already so far, by the time we went out to begin rehearsals for that, we were already probably written like 90% of the material, so it felt like, why not? Maybe they'll, leave these songs alone for 3 months because of all the touring, and then come back and see how we feel about them. You know, do something, and that within itself is just something different. You know, usually I think historically we just kind of rehearse, you know, kept on chiseling away until we're like, okay, now we're really ready to go to the studio. But we felt pretty good about what we were doing for the Marauder songs, and then just I think going out to do the Bright Lights thing, if anything, I think it was just more of like, it gave us an opportunity to we were already playing quite tightly together with the new material, but then just going back and revisiting this and having this new experience and leaving these songs completely alone because we weren't playing them at all on the road. We really had to concentrate on the Bright Light stuff, and it's just a different setting. But so for me, I think when we met G, we only had like 1 week of rehearsals before we went back into the actual recording studio, or to start recording the process, I should say, after Bright Lights. So we just had 1 week to reprise these songs we left alone for 4 months, which, you know, just kind of ignored, and I think they came rushing back to us.
I would say more so. I think Interpol kind of comes around when Interpol's ready to come around, and I think that sort of Daniel takes time writing pieces of music that he then introduces to us, so I think he always has, you know, a period of gestating his ideas. And then I think that leaves Sam and I with sort of a batch of music to sort of muck around with him. And I think that we just started making good progress, and I guess because the last one we knew we could do it, I think it was easy to predict the time frame.
I don't know if I look in terms of like who survived and who didn't survive, you know, because I mean, bands are very fragile things, and if you put out a series of records, and you know, that's already to me like you did something, you know, like you survived something, you did it, you saw it through. It's just kind of hard to say how long you're going to keep doing this for, but and I think Arcade Fire, I mean, I don't know if it's more people that you saw coming, like when you're out there on the road and so forth, and like airports and things like this, and got to catch up with here and there, but I definitely feel like a kinship with like the Yes and Team Marauder and Strokes and some bands that, you know, probably aren't bands anymore, like you know, like the Walkman and stuff like that. Just, you know, they're people who, you know, make great records, and came from the same sort of. That's more like New York centric though.
I really admire all the bands associated with that moment in time, like the Strokes, the AES, Liars, TV on the Radio. I want to talk about Rat-a-Tat more, the Walkmen, Arctic Monkeys. I mean, those are phenomenal bands, so it's just really an honor to be in a conversation with those bands. And I certainly feel a solidarity or a fraternity with bands from that period of time. Whether or not we're all like really close personal friends, I feel just proud to be part of that moment in time.
You know, there was a point where we would see, for example, like the guys on TV on the radio at this one rehearsal place that we had, that they were in the same building, and a couple of them worked at the cafe around the corner, and then, you know, that would be a daily occurrence, you know, and saying hi in the hallway. And then the next thing you know, a couple of years go by, and the next time you see them, you're playing at a festival together in Tokyo. And it's just a trip when you kind of get together and finally realize, wow, we haven't seen each other in 2 years, and now here we are in Tokyo or in Osaka, you know, to play a festival. And that's where we're catching up. And there's that kind of thing, you know, which just happens every few years, and you just are reminded of the respect and admiration you have for them, you know, because you simply came up with